Welcome back to another episode of the Plate Up Podcast. This is episode 12. Once again, we are back. It is D High, the Coog, and JD Hugh. What is going on, fellas?
How's it
What
going?
is going on?
Man, we are going to go ahead and jump on into the weekly catch up. Mr. Coog, what's been going on with you and what you been playing, man?
What a week. It's been a busy one. Playing, well, we had a little fun customs tournament last Thursday. JD Hugh and I partnered up. It was a duos tournament with a bunch of people from the Death Store Discord, and then another Discord who was hosting it. It was a lot of fun, I have to say. It kind of takes it to a whole different level when you know the people who are killing you, rather than it just being random. We've been trash talking some other members of our Discord. Like you've heard us always mention Frozen on this podcast. So we trash talked him. JD and I never ran into him. But
That was sad.
after JD left and D joined me, Frozen got the drop on us and killed us. But we came back with a loadout, and he had his loadout, and we took him out. So we tied it 1-1. That was the only time we saw them. But that was a lot of fun on Thursday. It was a sneak attack action. Our loadout happened to drop right next to theirs, and we got there first.
Oh, that's all that matters.
So that was a lot of fun. And then we're fostering again. So we foster dogs, my wife and I, and we're fostering 2 puppies. And when I say puppies, I mean 6 weeks old puppies. They are super tiny, super energetic, and they poop everywhere. So we like to keep our house clean. We've kind of abandoned that at this point. We're going to have cleaners come in afterwards, like clean the carpet and all that, because they're puppies. They have accidents. It happens. That's part of having puppies, but they're a lot of fun. They're a lot of entertaining. Our dog absolutely hates them. It wants nothing to do with them. She will actively leave the room if they're in there. And so, like, down here, murder basement, right? I record out of my murder basement here. She doesn't like coming down here either. She will spend all day with me down here while I work. And, like, that's how much she hates these dogs. But it's still a lot of fun. They're a lot of fun, and we just kind of let her be a grumpy old lady. And then other than that, we went to my sister-in-law's baby sprinkle yesterday. So not quite a baby shower. This is her second kid, so they call it a sprinkle, which was fun. Yeah, it was kind of a little nice to get together. It's supposed to be outside, but it poured like crazy. So we took it inside to this host house, which had a really nice finished basement. But that's really it. That was my week. It's been productive, I have to say. D, I'm gonna kick it down to you.
Brother, it's been cool for me, man. I've been, kind of chilling. This actually was my first week back at work since little Brooklyn was born. And so I was just kind of getting back in the fold of things, like had to catch up on some emails and all some stuff going on. But other than that, man, I've been really chilling. Baby girl is starting to get into her regular, flow of things. So, I'm just now getting back into gaming and kind of into like my regular routine, cutting the grass and doing all my, my dad stuff around the house. But man, it's been really chill. This week I played Ghost of Tsushima, and the new Warzone event with the 80s action characters and whatnot. And dude, it is fun. We talked about it a little bit before the pod, man. They they're right now, Call of Duty is hitting a home run, man. Like this Warzone thing is just it's got its hooks like in a lot of people, and it's very fun, man. And then yes, it can be repetitive, but it's still fun. And I think that's the thing that keeps doing it for me and drawing me back in. So that Ghost of Tsushima, that is an extremely deep game, man, and I'm playing it like crazy. I don't even think I made it 50% of the way through the game. Like I just looked at the map and realized there's a whole nother section above where I am now that I haven't even touched. So, dude, I'm just having a blast doing all the little side missions in there. So it's awesome. And man, I'm just chilling. But Mr. JD Hugh, how was your week, sir, and what you been playing?
Yeah, my week went by pretty quick. Played only Warzone this week. I have not had an opportunity to play another game. Fortunately, me and Ku have been able to link up for a lot of our testing prior to going into our match. I think that helped us out significantly. We didn't take first place in any of them, unfortunately. We just kept getting put in really bad situations. But it was fun. We had a lot of fun with the people that we knew on Thursday. and some of them we didn't. We just kind of got to gauge where we've fallen for the TTV type mindset, and we're not at the very bottom like we thought we were, but we're not far from it either. So it was good. It was a lot of fun. Headed off to Alabama on Friday. Had a wedding down there. Had a Catholic wedding. So a lot of you know about Catholic weddings. Sometimes they're super long, sometimes they're super short. Well, we were fortunate enough to have a super short one. The priest was actually really funny. Grew up Baptist, and then converted over to Catholic, and he was just having a ball with it. He absolutely was funny. We had a good time. We had a lit after party. We went to what's called the Wine Loft down in Alabama in Birmingham. We had an open bar, and so everybody was just drinking, having a good time. And then we rolled up to another after party where we had a roof party. And we were talking about this before the pod. It was pretty lit. Everybody's having a good time. COVID didn't seem to exist at that moment because nobody had masks on. Everybody was close. Everybody was drinking. Everybody, if you know anything about the Southerners, they're very, very personable. It doesn't matter if you know them or not. Most of the time, they're just going to come up there and just start talking to you and just having a good time. And it was just a blast. Me and Jenny were down there. We had a lot of fun. Went home, or went to the hotel at like 1:00. Had to be out by 8 so we could get on the road, so we could be here for this beautiful podcast. So it was a struggle this morning to get everybody up and moving, especially because you're just tired. Not even really hungover, just tired. And we got up here, and I went through Hopkinsville, Kentucky on the way back, and it was something special as well. I went to this gas station that had 2 people in it that did not care about anything going on in life. Didn't care about customers coming in, didn't care about people paying for stuff. It was just weird. It was a weird gas station. And it was fun, though. It was an adventure all the way around. So I had a lot of fun, and we're back. Hopefully this week we can get back into some more Warzone, and then maybe even some Valheim. I know we kind of floated around with that, kind of got away from it. I think we probably need to go back to it here and continue to build that up.
Especially since we're paying for a server.
Sure.
Right on. Well, that is it on the weekly catch up, and that's going to bring us on over into the news corner. And I'll go ahead and kick us off this week. I have 2 news stories, so I'll give my first one. And my first news story is that Warner Brothers Home Entertainment, also in coordination with DC Comics, is going to be bringing an animated Injustice film. Ladies and gentlemen, DC has some really good storylines. A lot of people would say the best comic book storylines of all time. And Injustice is one of the best ones to ever come out. And to see it in an animated fashion, if you've seen the DC animated films, you know that they are amazing. And for the most part, they're better than the live action stuff. So I have very high hopes for this Injustice film, and I can't wait until this one drops.
I mean, we've talked about it before on earlier podcasts. I love the Injustice storyline. Like, the video games are a lot of fun because you get to play both sides of it, but the comics themselves are just really cool. I think it'd still be cool to do a live action. And then, add like Zack Snyder's dark take on the DC comics anyway, and then put that into the Injustice story. That would be cool. And you can kind of keep it as like a parallel universe to the current timeline or the current story, just have Henry Cavill play like the evil Superman, right? And Bruce can still be Batman. You can still pull in Jason Momoa for Aquaman. I think it would be a really cool live action, but I'm excited to see the cartoon version too, or the animated version too, because it's just an incredible story.
Yeah, straight.
Yeah, no, I'm excited about it as well. I think it'll be good. I wonder if animated route is the right approach to take, but we'll find out when we see the viewer counts come in.
Yeah, it'll be good stuff. But Mr. JD Hugh, please give us your news story, sir.
Yeah, thank you. So mine is also to deal with AT&T and Warner Brothers, and AT&T has decided. Suddenly, it sounds like, I don't even know how much of this was talked about prior to their announcement of this, but they are spinning off Warner Media. This includes, HBO, CNN, DC Comics, the whole lot. They're spinning them straight off, and they're going to the Discovery Network, which I think is a little odd, because given the fact that Discovery only has, the Discovery Channel, the home cooking show channel and stuff like that. But they're going to spin this off. And the part of this, AT&T's been struggling for years. I think that's no surprise to everybody. With the acquisition of DirecTV, they have not been able to pull a profit from a lot of what they have. this was one of the few sections that they were able to actually pull a profit from, which is shocking how they spun it off. But the thought process behind this was they're going to be taking on Disney. So they spun off DC Comics mainly, right? That's the main driver behind this. Pulled it over to Discovery. Discovery is going to be acquiring more channels by the sounds of it. And the channel lineup is supposed to compete directly with that of the Disney Channel, where, as everybody knows, the Marvel series and all the Marvel movies are currently hosted. Disney owns all those, and Disney is making money hand over fist. I think they own 50%, I think, of Netflix's value or market share at this point. They are competing directly with Netflix. Well, they're half the size of Netflix for market share wise, but they are fighting to go up there very, very quickly. And considering it was only launched 2 years ago, actually pretty remarkable that they have that much share anyway. You know, HBO and all that only garners really about 20% of the market. And so this is to try and drive up those numbers and then compete directly with them. I'll be curious to see how it goes. I don't know if Discovery was probably the right platform for that. I think maybe they should have let HBO probably take the lead on that and then kind of make their own networks. I think there's more content there that was probably worthwhile that people would pay for. You hear Discovery Channel, you're just like, okay, that's Shark Week. That's all I'm going to watch it for. But the big behind the scene is going to be all this like DC comic, HBO shows and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting how it goes. I'm looking forward to it. I'll see how much it costs. Obviously, they need to keep their price in line with Disney, but downside of this is yet another streaming service that we'll all have to think about paying for. So that's all I got. Koof, what do you got for us?
Before I jump into mine, I comment on yours. I kind of agree with you. I'm kind of surprised they didn't go the HBO route because there's already the streaming HBO Max, which does exceptionally well because you have all those top tier HBO shows. You have the this year of movies where every month is a theater worthy movie being released. I'm kind of surprised they went that route, though. I think it's cute. They're going to try to take on Disney. I mean, you want to talk about a corporation that can't be caught? It's Disney. And when it comes to having the Star Wars rights and the Marvel rights, and then Fox now, they purchased Fox Entertainment. So there's The Simpsons and Family Guy and like all these shows. And you really think DC is going to be able to take all that on? Especially with, what we've discussed with their history of DC and Warner Brothers not doing it fair justice. Kind of like a Justice League. No. So I'm kind of an Injustice League in this case. So it's kind of interesting they're going to go that route. We have Discovery Plus because there is like the Food Network and then Discovery, and there's a bunch of shows on there we like to watch, but I don't see it competing with Disney Plus. And neither of them I see competing with Netflix. As big as Disney is, Netflix has been in the streaming game way too long to be taken down, but Disney's trying, and I think they're the only real competition for Netflix.
The thing is, they're like chipping away at that market share by pulling their stuff away from Netflix. I think is what's helping them do that.
Well, that was a huge thing for Netflix. Is that was what got them the big lead, where they had all those deals to stream, certain properties. But now that everybody else is doing their own streaming thing, they're pulling their stuff back, and that's sort of kind of leaving Netflix high and dry. But luckily, they started working on their own original content, and it's building up their library too. The thing that's going to screw Netflix over is they keep upping the price like 2 times a year on their customers, and they're going to price themselves out of the game, because when you got somebody like Disney who they're constantly adding more and more to their library that's available on top of original content and stuff like that, they haven't even really released the Fox Vault yet. They haven't even opened that bad boy up, to see how that's going to go. They haven't dropped all their Marvel characters yet. They haven't done all their Star Wars properties yet. Like, Disney is holding back, and meanwhile, while still being underpriced, compared to Netflix. And then you look at Discovery. Dude, I have Discovery too. I got it for free for a year because of like my phone. And dude, I love the Discovery Plus thing. They have so many shows on there that me and the wife watch together. And so I could see, this streaming thing, it's just going to become an all-out war at some point with all these different companies, having their streaming things. Now, some people don't need to have streaming services. They need to relax, but Yeah, like I mean, Apple did have some good shows to start out. That one, what's the name of the one news show with Jennifer Aniston and Steve Carell?
Yeah.
That was amazing. You know, that is a really good show. The show C with Jason Momoa, really good. You know, like if these companies put in the effort and actually have the content behind the price, yeah, you can stick around. But eventually, man, like if you become like Netflix and you get a little too greedy and just keep running up the price, like, dude, I feel like I get an email like twice a year from them saying, "Hey, we're gonna up your price again." Just letting you know. I'm like, all right, next. I told my wife, I said, next email from Netflix, we're done, and she
It's
agreed. So
always $1, just $1. That's
Yeah.
all we're doing. It's like, but you look back to when it used to be like $7.99, and
Yeah.
now you're up to like 18 if you want the 4K version.
dude,
Like, yeah, you've creeped that price up over the last few years.
yeah. I'm like, man, if I compare like the prices, you know, to like a few years ago, it's like damn near a third more. You know, I can't be doing that, man. You know, I don't want to hear that economy inflation crap. Like, dude, you need to keep these prices down if you want to keep me around because there's too many streaming services now. HBO
Mhm.
Max is already getting a nice little dent out of the wallet. You know, and then Disney, I have a 3-year old and now a newborn. Like Disney Plus will be in my house. You know, and if
Yeah.
not for them,
Yep.
for me, you know, for Marvel and Star Wars. So, you know, it's gonna be around. It's just
So
you know, that
we
go
were
ahead, man.
fortunate enough to get HBO Max for free with our AT&T internet. Like, we have the fiber internet, and with that came HBO Max for free. Because I said I'm not buying it. There's no way I'm going to get another streaming service. But they're like, "Yeah, we're giving it to you for free." I'm like, "Well, if it's free, I'll take it." You know. I
Look,
mean, I like it. I enjoy it, but I still don't think it's one I would get on my own.
HBO
I
Max
guess
had me sold after 2 words: Snyder Cut. I said, I even posted on Twitter. I said, if you bring the Snyder Cut, I promise you, I will give you my dollars. And they promised a Snyder Cut. And I've been a customer since.
I think what people are examining now is what's that original content on Netflix worth, right? I mean, Netflix spends millions and millions of dollars to produce these shows, way more than a normal cable company does. But their streaming quality is really, really good, right? And the shows make sense. They got good lines to them. They're hiring the best writers. You know, they got the best graphics. And you watch some of these shows, and you're just like, yeah, this was lit. Is that worth $20 a month, or is that only worth $15 a month? And Netflix also has to keep up in the price, not because these shows cost so much, well, partially that, but also because they have to continue to show that they're increasing their subscriber base, or at least a profit to the shareholders. And when does that become? To remember, like or like Coop said, when Netflix first started, you had DVDs and you had streaming service in one. Then they spun them apart because they didn't want to keep shipping out DVDs. This costs too much. Okay, we got rid of that. Everybody said, "Fine, I'll just there's some things I can't get on DVD that I can get on the streaming and vice versa." And then now, so I don't even think you can get DVDs from Netflix anymore. I'm not sure if that portion of their business even exists. But who would want to? Everything else is the streaming service is better anyway. So, and that just only feeds our appetite as Americans for I want it now, right? So I go on there, I load Stargate. If I had to wait for CDs to come back, one day shipping there, one day shipping back, 4 episodes on a CD because that's how much was on Voyager. Stick that back in the envelope, ship that back out. I mean, I'm waiting months for seasons.
That's true. That's why you got the 3 discs at a time. You finish one, you ship it, you start the other one. Then one comes in, you ship that one out. I mean,
Right?
you had to
Yep.
keep that
Yep.
roll going to watch those seasons.
Yep. True.
Mr.
All right.
Coob, you got another one for us?
I'm going to talk, my first one for us. I'm going to talk about a little controversial topic that has come up recently. We're all Twitch streamers here. We met on Twitch. Well, we met on Warzone, but we stream together on Twitch. Recently, there's been a new fad going on in the Twitch world, and it's talking in hot tubs. There have been ladies that have been making tons of money, have been getting unbelievable amount of followers and subscribers while sitting in a hot tub in a bikini and writing people's names on various things, whether it be themselves, props. That's really all it is. And I'll just tell you, if I had a hot tub, I would be in the hot tub in a bikini, writing names on myself, or props. Oh wait, sorry, no. It's the beard. I can't do it with the beard. But this was a controversial topic, specifically because it became a conversation of what's borderline kind of like pornographic versus not. You had other top Twitchers like XQC speaking out against it, saying this isn't right. This takes away from what Twitch was originally built for, which is game streaming. And the biggest hot tub streamer, Amarath, was obviously a big proponent for it. But recently, the ever question when it comes to companies like this is ad revenue. And the question came up, will advertisers want their ads associated with hot tub streamers? And I guess the answer was no. So what Twitch has done is they have spun off a new category. So you have Warzone as a category, you have Among Us as a category. Now you have a new one that is specific for hot tub streamers. And what this allows advertisers to do is now pick what categories do they want their ads to be on. So if I don't know, Xbox wants to have an ad running for their new Halo game on Amarath's channel, they can choose to do that. So it opened up the choice for advertisers. Now, there's been some backlash about this decision as well, saying, well, now you're kind of locking down the freedom to stream whatever you want. You're opening the door to allow advertisers to pick and choose and then hurt other channels. So, like, is Warzone too violent for ads? Because it's about shooting people. Is that going to now allow advertisers to shut down Warzone streams? A lot of back and forth. I personally think it's a good thing. I mean, why not make it its own category anyway? There's enough streamers out there doing it. So you might as well make it its own category. I mean, I'm streaming right now in the talk show and podcast category. So, I mean, it's there. Why not use it? So that's my update.
No, I feel like I feel like it's a good thing. I feel like if enough people are doing one item, right, then it needs to be its own category, right? No different than just chatting, or if Warzone's its own channel. If I'm doing something that's drawing an audience in, and yes, okay, maybe it's hot tub streaming, which is semi-sexual, half kind of pornographic type thing, right? Where I'm in a skimpy little bikini and I'm writing on props, and those props are very suggestive, right, as to what they could be. I mean, at the end of the day, it's still a category that everybody's participating in, and it can have its own spinoff and its own subsection without really harming the Twitch channel. And I think it'd be different when they had 5 people and they made a channel for it. Okay, probably not needed, but when we got hundreds of people, including guys in bikinis, trying to get in on that channel money, I'm not mad about it. I agree, it's probably worth the spin on its own. I feel like that way, if you're looking for it, you know where to find it, right? So I know I got to change my channel name when I go do it tomorrow. I mean, when I'm looking for it. But if you're not wanting to see it, right, which is I think more important here, you're not wanting to see it, you don't have to see it anymore, because it used to pop up under the just chatting section, and if you're scrolling by, you're going to see that kind of crap. And if that's not what you're interested in seeing, then you're like, I have to see this in order to get through to James's just chatting channel, right? But now I don't have to. I can worry about that crap being on its own area, almost like the porn channel on a lot of the cable subscriptions. You got to pay for that, right? Well, now it's out the way, and our kids aren't going to see it when they go to the just chatting section. I think that's probably more beneficial. Or if they want to see it, then they know where to go for it too. I think it's a win-win. I don't see where it's so controversial and why people don't like it.
I think it's controversial because people are losing money. You lose money if you're Amouranth, you're not hurting for money. You don't have a real job. You streaming and going on social media is your job. So yes, it probably does suck to lose thousands of advertisement dollars, but like I was saying, companies have the right to choose, just like you can choose to go on the streaming platform, show your body and make dollars that way, while, this person is trying to do it while playing video games or whatever. These advertisers can choose who they want to put their stuff, on. And being that Twitch is the platform that they do it on, they don't have to tell Amouranth, Jack, you're not a Twitch employee. You're a partner, sure, but you're not an employee. They don't owe you some, excuse as to why the people they're in business with don't want to put their dollars on, on your stream while you got, a bikini on sitting on a pickle Rick. Like, if they want to sit up there and say, hey, we're Honda and we want our ads associated with, this podcast stream over here that's talking about, video games or whatever, as opposed to this girl over here with, a string up her behind. Like, I get it, man. If I'm a company and I'll choose who I think my product, where that audience is, that's going to get the eyes on it, man. So I'm with Twitch on this one, man. I think, like, if you figured out a hack to get you some money in an easy way, you'll figure it out again. No sense in crying over spilled milk on this one. You'll be okay. Like I said, if you're Amaranth, you're not hurting.
Well, and I think this is another important fact, is that sex always sells, right? That's what 99% of HBO and everybody else, sex sells. That's what it does. She's not going to be hurting for no money. Nobody on that channel is going to be hurting for advertisers, because for every good advertiser that streams, like a Honda or Toyota or whatever the case is, there's going to be a sleazy one out there that is going to be like, I'm advertising on this channel for guy shirts. And I'm sticking it right on the Hot Tub streaming channel because I know that's where I'm going to get the most guys. So I don't think you're going to have to worry about them losing money. I think if it ever happened, I'd be shocked, right? Because I'd be like, what is happening at Twitch headquarters that they're not able to line this up with advertisers? Because I imagine that the advertisers for that would probably be 10 times bigger than the advertisers on the Warzone channel, right? Because you have a captive audience and you know what that captive audience is.
Dude, I mean, knowing that the hot tub thing has blown up to the point now, because I've seen it mentioned on like World Star, I've seen it mentioned on Yahoo News, I've seen it mentioned on MSN News. Like, the hot tub thing is blowing up. This is an opportunity for companies, who have a stake in the game. Like, if you're like Fashion Nova and you have bikinis and swimwear, like a swimwear line, this is your opportunity to reach out to these girls to say, hey, we can put some ads on your channel while you wear some of our merch. If you're Amaranth, you should be reaching out to these companies and bringing them to Twitch so you guys could all do a thing together. Not you saying, well, why isn't Snickers on my thing anymore? Like, that's not your job to do that. Yeah. Like, there's companies that can benefit from the hot tub streams. It's all about having the mind for business. Like, sitting there and being in a bikini is one thing, but what else? Are you adding on to it? If it is about the money in a business and a brand, bring in bikini brands. Somebody's gotta be willing to do that. You telling me Pacific Sun couldn't donate some bikinis to you and you do something there? Like, somebody's got it. But we could talk about this for like a whole podcast, man. We really could.
The Hot Tub Podcast.
You know what? We should all do
controversial
one in
or
a hot
not?
tub.
Yes.
That's episode 30. We'll all be in bikinis in a hot tub.
In inflatable
Talking
hot
about hot
tubs,
tub streaming.
in our
In inflatable hot
garages.
tubs. That's right.
with a can of Bud Light. What?
Sponsor.
Well, I
we could
have
do
another
Hobart
news
Girl.
story. I have another news story this week. I brought an extra this week. And the only reason I added it is because it is so damn cool. And it is one of my favorite action movies from my childhood. And it is the Highlander series. They have been talking about a reboot for this for years now. It has been bounced around for years. It has had several stars attached. But we finally look like we're getting somewhere. And they have attached it to the star that I think fits it the best, and that is Henry Cavill, and he will be starring in the Highlander reboot. Ladies and gentlemen, there can be only one. I asked for this. If they do a reboot, Princes of the Universe. I don't want to have the, do not give me a reboot and that song is not in there.
It'll be redone. Someone will take it and cover it just for the reboot. And I will weep tears because nothing beats Queen's version. But I am excited for this as well. I loved Highlander. I thought it was such a great movie. The same actor, Chris Lambert, does Raiden in the original Mortal Kombat movies. So it's like not really an actor most people know because he never really like took off, right? But when it comes to Highlander, especially when you had Sean Connery in there as his trainer, such a great movie. I really just enjoyed it. The sequels were okay. But that first one's definitely the best route to go.
Dude, the quickening, like the whole notion like these guys are centuries old, they're fighting with swords, and the only way you can die is to have your head chopped off. And your power transfers into the guy that killed you. Like, that is awesome, dude. I used to love that series. And then when the TV show came out, oh my God, man, what a show. Amazing stuff. But that is it for the news corner this week, and that is going to bring us into the topic for this week. And ladies and gentlemen, it's time to shed a tear. Some of our favorite shows of all time, they were taken away from us too soon, and that is the topic for this week, shows that are gone too soon. So we have compiled our list of shows that were canceled before their time. And ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get into it now. Mr. JD Hugh, please give us your first one, sir.
Okay, my first one was a recent one that just hit Netflix. It had an amazing first season. It was really, really good. I bought into it, full charged into it. And this season, or this episode, was called V-Wars. Now, the story about this was they go to Antarctica, they find, this virus type thing that turns people into a vampire, essentially, right? Two guys come back. One guy has natural immunity to it. The other guy doesn't. He starts his own vampire clan. His job is to work with the government to hunt down the vampires. All this takes place. They get into a war with each other. All these vampires start coming out. And then, the vampires kind of form a society and then have rules, and they work with the humans. And then it breaks down and everybody's at war with each other again. Politicians are getting involved. And then eventually at the end, his buddy, who is this perfect scientist, grabs a shotgun after working out and he goes, "Let's go get him." And you're like, dude, season 2 is going to be lit, right? Because this guy's been like kind of that scientist, a nerdy scientist that's never really, stood up for himself. And he like gets down from like working out on this bench. So they're in a full war and grabs his shotgun with all these muscles. He's like, "Let's go get him." And he walks out. And you're just like, dude, season 2. And it was canceled. It was canceled at the end of season 1. I have never been so disappointed in Netflix. I take it back. I have, and we'll go down that list here in a minute. But I have never been so mad at Netflix in one single. I was like, "There's no way this isn't getting renewed." Right? I mean, this show was awesome. People were loving it. There was a lot of good reviews about it, and then they just shut it down. I don't know if it cost too much. They never really, and this is the thing with Netflix, they never really give you the real reason as to why they're doing something. They just come up with some BS excuse and then spin it off and say good luck. And I still hold out hope today that it'll come back. It never will. And I'm going to be honest, losing a little bit of an empty spot in my soul.
So I had not seen this, but I mean, after you describing it, we were talking about preparing for this episode last week. I'm like, I kind of want to go see it. It sounds really good, but I had an internal struggle of, do I watch it knowing that it was cut off too soon and I'll never get that resolution that I'm looking for, or do I just avoid the heartache and just not watch it at all? I'm still on the fence. I haven't decided yet. I got so many other shows I have to watch first. So if it's on my list, it's going to take a while.
Right. Yeah.
I'm going to take my cue from JD here and say, I've never seen this one. Heard of it, but I've never seen it. It's one, I have it on my list on Netflix and just never watched it. And I'll probably go back at some point. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, you guys are missing out. It's a really good show. Some of it, at the beginning of it's a little boring. It's one of those shows that start building the character lines and everything. You're just like, okay, we can get past this really quickly. It'd be great. But by episode 2, if you're not hooked on it, you probably won't do. And I'm not even a big vampire guy, right? I'm kind of over the whole vampire thing. But this one caught me, not because it was a vampire, but just the storyline was really good.
I guess I'll go ahead and do the damn thing.
Let's do it.
Ladies and gentlemen, back in the 90s, we were given a good show. Originally, there was Quantum Break. That was about a man jumping from dimension to dimension. But what if I told you it's about, we can make it cooler. We can give you about a smart college student, and he accidentally takes 3 of his friends on a ride, and they go through a portal, an interdimensional portal, and jump from dimension to dimension and just go to all these different alternate Earths. And each episode was just its own adventure. Ladies and gentlemen, we jump with the good old star Jerry O'Connell, one of the hugest stars from the 90s, and the show Sliders. Jesus Christ, man, what a ride. If you remember, Quantum Leap, then it was awesome. Like that was very cool in itself. And then they took it and they just put a little more oomph into it for Sliders and had Jerry O'Connell on there. And it was amazing, man. And it went on for, I believe it was 4 or 5 seasons before it was canceled. 5 seasons. It has a huge cult following even today, and very much so. The stars of it are still on like the con circuits and all that, and still get all the love and praise that they deserve. But ladies and gentlemen, this show was canceled before its time. They killed off some of the main characters, and kind of just there were people who didn't want to return back to the show, so Fox canceled it, man. Just took it away from us.
It's funny you mentioned Fox. Like, there's one of them I'm going to talk about in this list is also canceled by Fox. They're pretty good at canceling shows. But so Sliders was a show that I really liked. I only saw one season of it, and then I got busy with something else and never went back into it. But didn't they get picked up by the Sci-Fi Channel when Sci-Fi came out? Like when they made that cable television, I thought it was picked up by them for a couple seasons.
I thought so too. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. I think they did.
So I'm kind of surprised. Like there's a home for it for sure, the Sci-Fi Network. But
Right.
I mean, they had their own set of issues with canceling shows. Stay tuned. That should not have been canceled early, but that's one I need to go back and watch because I really love 90s sci-fi. Right? I mean, that's where you had Star Trek: The Next Generation. You had all Stargate started in the 90s.
Mm.
So I need to go back and watch Sliders for sure.
So I only watched a couple of episodes of Sliders. I never really got into it. I'm going to be honest. I get what they were doing. At the time, I was like, okay, cool. I get how there's going to be a different storyline, especially if you believe in the unlimited parallel universes that the show kind of went on. I don't know. I just couldn't get behind it. I don't think there's anything wrong with the show. I just think it was my mindset at the time. I think if I was to watch this today, reference our Stargate conversation that we had, I would probably get behind it and probably watch it, right? I think it'd probably be better today than it was then. And that's only because where I am in life, right? It makes a little bit more sense for me to sit down and watch this and understand it. You don't really understand parallel universes and how that theory works, especially like string theory and things like that. The show kind of is okay, but you're not fully invested in it. It's my personal thought.
All right, Mr. Coov, your first one, sir.
All right. My first one is a comedy that I first started watching on Netflix. It was part of their back catalog that they just kind of converted up. It was not a Netflix original. It was just when they started doing TV shows, they put it up on there. And it is about an evil mega corporation. They're not evil outright. They just care more about profits than they do humans. And, anything for the almighty dollar. But it's a show called Better Off Ted. And the concept of the show is it follows kind of an upper level executive named Ted. He's the director of research and development for this corporation, and they invent like the weirdest things, like to try to make a dollar, right? And it's funny because like at the time, one of the episodes they talk about lab grown meat, and they're saying how this is so weird and no one would ever buy into this, and now we're actually trying to make that. But it's a comedy. It's a very funny show because if you've ever worked in a corporate office, you can relate to this show. Like you have those high upper end executives who only care about stock, who only care about money. They don't care if the invention isn't ready yet and could possibly kill you. They just want it pushed out there. But in this case, Ted's boss was played by Ellen DeGeneres' wife, Portia de Rossi. Rossi, yeah. And she is funny. She plays this deadpan, like soulless person who's like just doesn't really get the concept of why you have emotions and like why do you care about people? Like, oh, those poor people were burnt to a crisp, a 3rd-degree burns. That's fine. We'll just give them some aloe and it's over. I mean, like that was her character, and it was just so funny. But the show only went for 2 seasons, and then it got canceled just due to low viewership. I thought it was hilarious. I've gone back and watched it a few times because every episode's funny to me. There's little Easter eggs they put in there. So, like the 2 lab guys, they invent a facial recognition to like open doors and access the water fountains and things like that. And the problem is the facial recognition doesn't recognize people of darker skin. And I'm not trying to avoid saying, a certain race. It's just anyone with dark skin, including tan, like super tan people, was kind of the joke in there as well. So like the minority employees would like rise up and like kind of like fight the executives, and they're like, well, we'll just give you, a white person to follow you around, and they can like open all the doors for you, because that's fine. We don't need to spend money to fix this. We'll just give you a buddy to follow you around. I mean, it's stuff like that. It was just so funny and random. But like they'd have Easter eggs, like a dialect from Doctor Who was in their lab that they were trying to invent, so you can see it in the back corner. But great show, really funny. I recommend it. But you only get 26 episodes, 2 seasons worth.
I did see Better Off Ted, and it was hilarious, man. I was trying to hold in my laugh when you were talking about that, because that was hilarious, man. About them offering to have the white person walk them around and all that stuff to open the doors for them. But dude, what a funny show. Netflix is another one. They kind of screw the pooch on some of their shows, man. I'm sure there'll be another one that comes up on here that we discuss at length, but it was a good show, and I'm actually surprised it didn't get picked up somewhere else. Like they didn't just sell it off to somewhere, because it was a really good show. And I do remember it getting very high praise online at the time when it was on.
Yeah, I've never actually seen this show. Shocker, I know, to a lot of our people that listen to this podcast. But I did just Google it while we were talking, and it has very high remarks from Rotten Tomatoes and people who rate it on Google, and it's up there in the high 80s. So I'm actually shocked that it only has two seasons, but also if what you're saying is what was on there. And it may have been its blessing. It may have hit cancel culture and not been able to ever stick around anyway. So, funny back then is not funny today, ladies and gentlemen.
True. I do think it picked up a little bit of a cult following on Netflix, but not enough to reboot it or bring it back.
Mr. JD, your next one, please, sir.
It's already back to me again. It's like just living in everybody's shows here. Okay, another one that was just recently released. A lot of mine are on Netflix. I don't know if a lot of people know this. I don't spend a lot of time on network TV anymore. It just kind of sucks my soul dry. And so I hate, and I mean hate, commercials. I was actually at the hotel this past weekend. I had to watch a commercial because obviously they don't have any streaming services on the hotel. And I just flipped on my phone. I was like, I can't do this. I'm just going to watch Netflix. And so a lot of my shows are going to be off of streaming services. This one, no different. This show had just come out. It was about some teenagers that ended up lost. They came home from their bus where they were away at some event. They ended up back in town, and everybody was gone. All the adults, all the kids, everybody was gone. The only people that were there who came off the bus, even the bus driver who drove them there, he left and no one ever saw him again. So this group of kids, almost like Lord of the Flies, this show is obviously called The Society, and it tells you a little bit. They formed their own society. You have two very aggressive type people. You have one that's like all about law and order. You have the other one that says, no, we should do what we want. There's no parents here. We're going to do this is the next thing. And it's just great. And they find out that maybe they're in a parallel universe, aka Sliders, right? And so they're like, how did we get here? And they can't leave the town. There's all these snakes or fallen trees or something that prevents them from getting too far out. And they're all here. Everything in their houses are the same. They keep waiting for their parents to come back. They think maybe their parents are eventually going to come back. And all this takes place. A fantastic show. Got one season. Was up for season 2. Was renewed by Netflix for a season 2. Yours truly was super excited. And then they gave us the same line that I think drives every single person crazy. And they said, we're not going to do this because, and you guessed it, COVID. They canceled the renewal because of COVID. I don't know how COVID had anything to do with Netflix, because last time I checked, Netflix shares went up during COVID because everybody was at home and they were watching streaming services. So I don't know how that related to a cancellation of a really good show. As you can tell, still a little fired up about it because it was a really, really, really good show. And it wasn't one I ever expected to actually like. And so when I first started watching, I was like, oh my God, this is so stupid. And then I was just like hooked. But the third episode, I'm like, no, she didn't.
JD getting involved in the teenage drama.
You got me. Got me hooked.
So I've never seen The Society. I have a feeling we're going to be saying that a lot this episode, all of us. So it's not just JD this time saying he hasn't seen it. It's kind of funny. You said the premise about all the adults disappearing, and my next one that I'm going to talk about is kind of the same concept, which was also in 2019 and was also canceled. I think due to COVID. So it's kind of funny. But it's an interesting concept, right? Like having kids now being the only ones left in society or in, I guess, the world. And like what happens. So yeah, it's very Lord of the Flies, very strong influences from that, it sounds like. But with all the shows we're going to talk about, don't know if I want to watch it because then again, I'm going to get hooked and just frustrated that I can't get that resolution.
Yep.
I also haven't seen The Society. I've seen previews for it. Haven't seen it yet. It's another one on the list. Dude, my list on Netflix, I just looked at it the other day. Enormous, dude. Every time we talk about something on this show, I just add to it, man. And so that one is definitely on there. I will go back because you mentioned it before. And so I said I was going to go ahead and watch it whenever I get some free time.
I mean, it is not one I would carve out special time and attention for, but it is one that if you have some time and attention to give it, it's definitely one to get hooked on. Like Coop's point, some of these shows are really good, and a lot of mine only have 1 or 2 seasons, and then they got canceled, and they didn't know they were going to get canceled. I think they probably would have wrapped up The Society a little bit different had they not got the renewal notice. But when they didn't, and then it got renewed, and then it got canceled, I think that screws the fans. I always think if they're going to cancel a show, personal opinion, they should give us 2 or 3 episodes. I don't care if it's a new season with just 2 or 3 episodes, or it's the ending of the season they just add 2 or 3 on. They give us closure, because that just kind of tilts me.
Yeah, just come back and wrap it up.
Right. Yeah. Just give me some BS conclusion. I don't care what it is. Just make me feel like this journey I was on didn't just end with like we're at one street going here, and then we just stopped. How did we get home? It doesn't matter. No, but it does.
Right on. Well, that brings me to my next one. Ladies and gentlemen, what if I told you power in the entire world would go out? And that's it. There's no way to turn it back on. You're just out here. Back in caveman days again. No electricity, no nothing. And then it picks up 15 years after that, and we have entered the TV show called Revolution. Ladies and gentlemen, when I tell you this show came out in 2012, and it was a phenomenon. I remember the hype behind it before it even hit TV was enormous. They were showing promos during the Super Bowl, all types of stuff for this show. And then when it finally came out, it was a massive success. You got Giancarlo Esposito as the incredible villain. First of all, let me say something. This guy can play any bad guy you need him to. If you need a bad guy, Giancarlo Esposito is the man you need to call. The dude is tremendous in everything he touches. This is a show produced by J.J. Abrams, and the pilot was even directed by our man himself, Happy Hogan from the Iron Man series. You know who he is, man. They took my show away. 2 seasons, they took it away. They gave us the gold for 2 seasons. They let you live in this world where there was no power and people were struggling. There was a power struggle. These people were calling themselves the United States government, but they were really villains who were just power hungry and trying to hog all the resources and kill the heroes of our story. Ladies and gentlemen, this was a good show. If you've never seen it, at the very least, go watch season 1 and see why we were all hooked back then. And then experience the sadness and watch season 2 and watch it end right there, and you get nothing more.
So I'm probably one of the reasons these shows get canceled. I've only seen 1 season of this episode of this show. But I mean, you're right. This was such a good show. I should have gone back and watched the seconds to get my little 1 view count for their ratings. But I really enjoy a post-apocalyptic time setting, right? You have I Am Legend, which is a great movie, World War Z, but this kind of took it to that next level. Because you saw how they had to survive. No power. We're so reliant on electronics. If we're just reliant on the internet. If the internet disappeared, humanity would end. We would riot and kill each other. But to see these people have to survive without just any electricity, and then the sneaky underhandedness that Esposito does as his character. It's a great show, and it's very sad that they canceled it.
Yes, I know this is going to be a shocker to a lot of you. But I actually have seen this whole thing through and through, season 1, season 2, and it was an awesome show. I liked when they got Texas involved at the end of season 2. That's how much I remember this show. They got Texas involved to fight the American government. They were full sending. I got a little weird with the little robots, okay, that were sucking the electricity. That was a little weird for me. I think we were kind of off the deep end. We could have reeled that back a little bit and everybody would have been happy. I don't like how we ended it. It gave us a little bit of a conclusion, but when you got Texas on board and everybody's full out sending it, and then you don't even show me the war that's been building up for the whole season. I mean, I missed this, and I was one of the reasons it probably got canceled as well. I did not even know this show existed. Actually, I got texted by my sister-in-law, and she was like, hey, you guys get time, you need to watch Revolution. I'm like, I don't have time for that crap. And so eventually we were there, and Jenny brought it up, and we watched the first episode, and I was like, give me more. Give me more. I'm going to give me more. Bring it in. And we watched the whole thing, and I loved this show. I was going to add this to my list as well. So the fact that I seen D at it helped me struggle from 7 shows that I wanted to add to 6, which then I had to narrow to 5 because I got a lot of grief, which I don't think is fair, but okay. And it was a fantastic show. I liked they were confiscating guns, and there was these subsections. So at first you only think that the whole government's run by this like one person, but then you find out Georgia and the southern states over there had formed their own little little communion over there. You had the West Coast. It had its own little government set up. You had the middle of the United States had its own government set up. The Northeast, the South, everybody had their own little governments. But they wanted nothing to do with each other, right? And they didn't want to own the whole United States, and no electricity. But some people had steam power, right? They went back to the olden days and had steam power cars, and then some sections only had guns, right? And they were just ready for war. And it was just really great balance of just awesomeness. I love this show. Really, really on the top of my list, probably the top 7 of shows that I truly enjoyed. And I had no idea why NBC canceled this, because this had to have been a moneymaker for NBC. Considering that no one watches NBC really for anything else, I was shocked that they went ahead and canceled this.
All right. Let's go ahead and kick it on over to the Coob. Your next one, sir.
All right. So, kind of following JD's pick with the Society, this show is also about what happens when adults no longer play a part. So, the concept of this show is a bomb goes off. You think it's a nuke, but it's not. And only adults are affected by it. What it does is it turns them into mindless zombies who can only repeat the last thing they said at the time that the bomb went off. So you have all these zombies walking around saying, like, I need to get a coupon. I need to get a coupon. I need to get a coupon. Or whatever it is, whatever it happened to be. But it focuses on one kid. But the show I'm talking about is Daybreak. That was on Netflix. This was a ride. So it focuses on one kid who transfers to the school, and then the bomb goes off, but it picks up with everything already going on. And then throughout the season, they kind of do flashbacks, and you can kind of see what happens with the bomb going off. And it's like him just surviving, because the city has split into different gangs, right? So you have all these kids that are running different gangs. So like the jocks have their own gang, the nerds have their own gang. It's like this high school just took over this whole city and split out. But it has the very talented Matthew Broderick in it. He plays a character in there who doesn't necessarily seem affected by the bomb, but you learn a little bit more about that later. This was a show, I watched the trailer on Netflix, and I'm like, I got nothing to watch. Why not? I'll sit down for an episode. I got nothing to do today. It's my day off. I think I finished that season that day. Like it hooked me right away. It was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. But they end it with an event that I'm not going to spoil, but it sets it up for the next season, and then Netflix decides, we're not going to renew. So technically it wasn't canceled. They just didn't renew it.
Here's the thing, man. I have beef with Netflix over this particular show. You don't give me something that damn good for a season and then take it away. So if you're listening, executives at Netflix, you will see me with the hands at some point. I will advance upon your position, and it will be on like the break of dawn. I loved Daybreak. It took me about a day and a half to go ahead and binge my way through that show. I too was like you. I saw the initial trailer. I was like, looks okay. I want to see more. So when it finally comes out, I said, all right, at the very least, I'm going to watch the pilot, see what it's about. I watched the pilot. A day and a half later, I had binged the entire show, and I was like, I can't wait for season 2. I looked, after I saw you had put it on your list, I looked back on Facebook and found my old Facebook post where I said, I need Daybreak season 2 right now. And it's gone. There's nothing. They didn't sell it off to anybody. They didn't give the rights to anybody. They just said, we're not renewing it. You get nothing more from us. It's one of the shows where when you have a show like that, you only have one episode to set the hooks in somebody. And that pilot episode does it so well. I was just having the conversation with my wife. There's a unique way to tell, like, because zombies are so oversaturated right now in the movie and TV market, you have to tell it in a unique way for it to hit, different. And the way that they do it in there, where it's just the adults and the kids are sectioned off just like in high school, they have their little cliques around the city. Perfect, man. What a unique way to tell, a story, and the way that it progresses throughout the season. I loved it, man.
Kitty, did you see the show?
I have not seen this show. I have it on my list to go watch, but I have not seen it at all. In fact, this would be something that I probably would have watched, given the content of it, because I was into the zombie thing for the longest time. I was a big fan of The Walking Dead and spinoffs, and then the spinoffs kind of killed it for me, and then The Walking Dead killed it for me, and then I just stopped watching stuff about zombies. But I think at the time I definitely would have picked this up and probably watched it, and kind of surprised I didn't even hear about it until you put it on the list. So it has not come up one time.
This is that, it ends. You get one season and that's it. If you get a chance to watch it, watch the one season they have available. It's that good, man.
And the ending of the season, I mean, I won't spoil it. I was going to talk about it, but I won't spoil it. It could end there. Like, you could say, okay, the show ends there, but it's just not a very satisfying ending because they do set it up for it to keep going. But I've made my peace with it. I'll be right beside D, throwing hands at the executives if they refuse to bring this back. But pending that I'm not going to be standing in front of Netflix executives, I've made my peace with it ending with the ending it has. I'm not satisfied with it, but it's there.
I need to get a reading on the books.
Yeah, if you guys go there and put hands on them, can you also get them through Renew Society? Thank you.
Yeah, we'll add it to
the list. And if you touch Umbrella Academy, your ass is mine.
Yes, you leave that show alone. That's a great show.
Damn right. All right, Mr. JD Hugh, your next one, please, sir.
All right, so my next one up. Where do I want to take this conversation? All right, I think another one that I'm going to leave these two to last because I do like these. Okay, so the next one on my list is going to be a show that actually hooked me by accident. I was bored one day. I was sitting at home. Obviously, it wasn't a streamer yet. I think this was like a year and a half ago, maybe. And I was just chilling, and I was just like, cool. And something popped up on Netflix, that You May Like section. And I watched the first episode. They brought this guy. At first, he was Japanese, and then he died, and then he came back as this white guy. And I'm like, what is going on here? What happened? This show, ladies and gentlemen, is called Alternative Carbon. And this is where you have a disc that's put inside your spine, I think is where it was located, and it takes your essence and transfers you into a hard drive, to which then you can get AKA reskinned and brought in as another person, but you may look different, but you're the same person because it just basically took your skin like it's a suit, and then that's who you are now. I love this show. I didn't understand it at the beginning, and he's brought back to investigate a murder that took place, but the guy was alive. He wasn't actually dead, but he came back, and then it was all kinds of weirdness. I loved it. Season 2 was even better in my opinion. I cannot believe they canceled the show. I was fully invested in it, and then they ended. And I knew the good thing about this is you knew it was ending. So Netflix had already said, you're getting another season, but you're not getting another one after that. So enjoy it. And I kind of was disappointed in that, but I at least respected that decision from Netflix to tell us that we're not getting another one early so that we didn't have any expectations when this ended that we were going to get something else. And I love the characters. I like how we could swap out characters. To me, this was such a great setup because you never had to have a prime main character that you had to keep bringing back and spend money on and everything. You literally swapping out these characters whenever you see fit. So I never understood why the show got canceled. It can't have been that expensive to maintain. Maybe it was, and I'm just delusional, but it was really, really good, and I loved it.
So this is another show. I only watched a few episodes. I've told you I'm the reason these shows get canceled. I affect their ratings. From what I saw, you're right. It was such an interesting concept to have your essence downloaded and be able to be repurposed. You see that a lot in video games now, but to actually see it like in a show, like it was here. Oh, you have like EVE Online, right? Is a very popular game right now, where you download into clones. Like you have an insurance policy to keep your clones. Kind of like that. You kind of have this essence that can get transferred from body to body. But I did like the concept that you can swap out people. It stars a great actor for one of them that I'm sure D is going to want to talk about. So I'll make sure he can. I do plan on going back and finishing this. This is actually high on my list to finish up. Probably right after I finish Breaking Bad, I'm probably going to move over to Altered Carbon because it is short. It's only 2 seasons. I think 18 episodes total.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate. But I mean, at least Netflix gave the courtesy to say, "Hey, this is going to end," instead of giving you a cliffhanger and then decide later that you're not going to pick it up.
Right. Yep.
So they, I haven't seen the ending. I'm assuming they wrap it up in some sort of way. But I'll let you know once I actually see it.
I've seen this entire series. Joel Kinnaman, Anthony Mackie, both kicked ass in there.
Yep.
Incredible show. Like I said, it's something about Fox and Netflix, man. They just hate success. They hate shows that are good. Like, because when Altered Carbon came out, I get why, it didn't have a huge fan base. It's a weird show. And it's one of those shows that when you watch it in the beginning, you're either hooked by it or you're completely turned off by it. For those of us who were hooked by it, we love that show, and want more of it because that's such a cool premise. You die, your conscience can be downloaded into this hard drive. Now you're put into another body. That's cool. That's very cool.
Yep.
And the way that they did it was like you served like a jail sentence. So dude did like 300 years in jail and then he gets out and they put him in another body and say, now you work for us. You're investigating a crime or whatever. Like, that's so cool. Like, that's a really cool premise. How the hell could you not do it just like Black Mirror? In every episode, you can have a big name actor come in and be that same character. Female, male, whatever it is, everybody just keeps rolling over. You could do it that way. Netflix screwed the pooch on this one, man. Like they always do. You like this show? It's gone.
Doctor Who to the extreme.
You don't like this show? We're making 9 seasons of it.
Right.
Guess what just got renewed?
My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, season 20.
So subscriber numbers to view this, 3.
Right on. Well, that brings me to my next one. Ladies and gentlemen, back in the 90s, this lady was a teenage heartthrob. Talking about Jennifer Love Hewitt. And then what happens when time passes by and this lady goes from teenage heartthrob to full-blown lady snack? And then you put her in a show where she plays a masseuse, and her massage parlor also doubles as a low-key brothel. And it's called The Rub. Set in Texas, we are talking about a TV show that had a couple of seasons and then it was canceled. And it is called The Client List. It is all about starring Jennifer Love Hewitt, who runs this massage parlor. That she works at this massage parlor and they're turning tricks out of this massage parlor for profit. And this is how this lady is making her money. And then it's just a really amazing show. I figured the ladies especially would have loved this show and latched onto it because the themes in there about this woman just trying to do whatever she can to make it and take care of her kids. I believe it was a movie at first, and then it was made into a television show, and I believe it jumped networks. I know it was on the Lifetime network at some point, but it had 2 seasons, and then it was just canceled out of nowhere. I really like this show, and I wish that it got a second life somewhere.
So never seen this. Actually, I hadn't heard of it till you put it on the list. I just Googled it to kind of see like what's the cover photo and all that. So I typed in the client list TV show in Google, hit images, and I think I need to turn my not suitable for work filter on because the images that popped up for that, I mean, they're all clothed, but still. um, Never seen it. I mean, I can agree with you. Jennifer Love Hewitt was definitely that teen heartthrob, back in the day. I think she's always kind of been like one of those like female idols, as she got older. Um, I have no comment. I just haven't seen it.
I'm the same way. I've never seen it before, um, but I never even heard it until you posted on here. But I am actually surprised because I actually watch a lot of things that Jennifer Love Hewitt's in. I'm like you guys. She was definitely eye catcher. I know what you did last summer and so forth. Just she was there for me, and I loved being a part of that summer that she knew what she did. Anyway, but I was on there. I think it was Heartbreaker. She was on another one that just really kind of got me. And then this one, I'm surprised I haven't seen. I was on the one that she talked to Ghost or something. I can't remember what that one was called.
Ghost Whisperer,
but that
I
had
believe.
something like that. She had like 9
Yeah.
seasons of that, and that was actually pretty good too. So I don't know. All these are really good. I'm just surprised I've never seen it because I didn't know Jennifer Love Hewitt actually still acted. So kind of sad that I haven't seen it, but I'll probably throw it on the list just so that me and Jenny can have a good comedy to laugh to. I'm assuming it's a comedy.
More serious than that. But that was mine, Mr. Coov. What is your next one?
All right. When it comes to screwing the pooch about a TV series, no one does it better than Fox. They had a success on their hands that is evident with the cult following that has happened since, with the parodies that have happened since, with the references in other TV shows to this one. Fox screwed this show up so much that they showed it out of order. The episodes were not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They showed like 1, then 5, then 9, then 2, then 3. So it made no sense to the viewer as to what was going on. It starred the ever hilarious Nathan Fillion, and I'm talking about Firefly. So this is when you take two iconic genres of sci-fi and western and you throw them together, Firefly was the baby. It is a space cowboy kind of show. It's about smugglers who used to be in the military and they left that life to become smugglers. It's hilarious. It's funny. They pick up some cargo, which happens to be a genetically modified girl who kicks ass. This was a show that when you watch it in order is incredible. If you watch it out of order, it makes no sense. You have no idea what's going on. 1 second they're all mad at each other. The next episode they like love each other. And it just didn't work. And Fox, I don't know what the executives at Fox were thinking. I think they said, let's take a show and let's see how screwed up we can make it. This gained such a big following, though, they ended up making a movie to kind of wrap up those loose ends because no one had no idea what was going on, and that's Serenity. And they kind of linked it all together. But great show if you ever watch it. Nathan Fillion, even in the Castle TV show that went for a number of years, his daughter dresses up as that character that he played, and he just kind of makes jokes about it. If you haven't seen it, I recommend it, but make sure you watch Serenity afterwards so you can kind of get that resolution that you were missing. Fortunately, this is one that was ended too soon with a resolution that came later.
We talk about our all-time cult fan followings, and ladies and gentlemen, we know that Release the Snyder Cut was a big thing. You talking about something that's been going on for a long time? The resurrection of Firefly, the TV show, has had a cult following that I don't think will ever die down, dude. People have been asking for the show to be resurrected so many times. It is the show that made Nathan Fillion into a household name and has had people fan cast him in so many things because of this show. I don't understand why this show, considering all the love it's gotten over the years, has not been sold off and resurrected somewhere. Sci-fi, Netflix, anybody should take this show up and resurrect it, man, because it would bring in all types of numbers. This is in the all-time cult following Hall of Fame. This was an amazing show. And like you said, I have no idea what the hell Fox was thinking showing stuff out of order. I too, like you, had to find out it was out of order from the internet and had to go self-correct to figure out what was going on and why the stories were all jacked up. But good show, man. Really good show.
I have not personally seen this, but I do know there is a huge cult following on it because a lot of people that I hung around did watch this. And they're like, oh, Firefly is so lit, Firefly. And I was just like, yeah, okay. Any show named Firefly, not going to watch, okay? And they, especially when they explain it to me, just like you explained it to the audience, Q, it's where a Western meets up with space. And I was like, don't like Western, so not a show for me. But I know that it generated so much interest. And I am like you, I'm surprised it got canceled given the amount of people that wanted to see it. The amount of people that like die hard fans, die on the sword. This is the best show ever made, and it was jacked up from the get go. So it's actually shocking to me that they did cancel it. For me, it was just Tuesday when they canceled it. It didn't matter to me one bit. But I know the people who did love this stuff was like it was a tragic Tuesday.
I mean, there was even rumored that Nathan Fillion himself offered to buy the rights from Fox, and Fox said no. Like, and if that rumor was true, like that is just egocentric Fox. Like, why wouldn't you sell it? Because it's a moneymaker. You have all the fans. I mean, it's continued in comic books, so one of the comic companies picked it up and have continued the story at least. But to end a show that has such a huge following as it does, I don't get what the executives are thinking to not reboot it or not sell it off. Like Dee said, give it to Netflix. They pick up all these shows that have been canceled, like Arrested Development, and keep making them. They have the money. Let them do it.
Mr. JD Hugh, your next one, please, sir.
Oh man, so this is hard for me. I think we're gonna go stick on that kind of Netflix binge, and we're gonna go with a show called The Travelers. If you haven't seen this show, it is about people who are brought back in time from the future to the past by which soon to be found out a supercomputer that's actually at war with another supercomputer in the future. And they send these people back to correct human events to postpone the catastrophic events that eventually happen in the future. Very first episode, this team gets sent back from all these people who are about to die, and they don't ever take a body forcefully. They wait to the second the person is supposed to die or do something that causes their death, and then they invade their body. And then they pull them back from whatever they were supposed to do or whatever that case was, and they bring them into their current state, and they're called agents. And these agents go and, the very first one were preventing, I think, a nuclear bomb from going off or a catastrophic failure at this plant or this major car wreck or a plane crashing or whatever the case may be. And the show was just awesome. I love Travelers. I thought it was such a unique theory. It was such a unique design. The characters, you really fall in love with the characters. At first, you're like, these characters are all weird. They don't really work together. But you eventually just get this whole package that you just love, right? And at the very end, and this is how they wrapped it up, they did do a good wrap up on it. He just goes to the time that he was supposed to go to, right? The main agent goes to the time that he originally came to Earth and said one message back to the supercomputer and said all travelers are dead, basically, or something like that. Don't come. And the travel program ended. And I thought that was such a lame way to end this show because this show was so much better than that one line and how pathetic it was. But at the end of the day, it was a great show and it got canceled by Netflix. And I don't know why.
I'll just go ahead and say straight out, never seen this show. Remember the promos for it, never watched it. I didn't even know it was on Netflix. So I have to add that one to the list as well.
This one you get a full, I think, 3 seasons in, if I remember, and it actually has a conclusion, but it's a weak one.
I loved The Travelers. I thought this was such a great show, and I'm with you, JD. The ending, it was the Sopranos ending, right? It goes to black. I mean, it doesn't go to black, but it's like you're left going, really? You built this whole thing up for, what was it, 3 years, like 3 seasons worth, and you just kind of drop it. Like, all right, we're done.
Yeah.
Like, it was such a good show, a lot of twists in it that were great. Yeah, finding out the supercomputer is at war with another supercomputer, and like they're altering the history just because they can. I mean, it was a good not really action, but it kind of had that feel to it, right? I mean, just the concept of snatching people right before their death and taking over their bodies for time travel. And it opened up this interesting concept of time travel, right? We don't know if we can travel back or through time, forward or back, but can you send a consciousness back? Can you put it into another body rather than physically going yourself? So it like opened up that new avenue of, can time travel be done maybe consciously rather than physically? But great show. I was very sad when it ended. You're right. They at least told us. They gave us a warning, but kind of dropped the ball on what that ending could have been.
Yeah, I agree.
That brings me to my next one. This was a hilarious show. Taken from us too soon, man. Pilot episode shows a young man named Dave who's waiting to marry his bride, and he's at the altar, and his bride stands him up. And then we're off from there, and his friends rally around him, and it's all about helping this man get back on his feet. And it gives us a group of 6 friends that are amazing. And the funny thing about this is the bride that stood him up is still in the friends group that hangs out together. So now they have to still see each other and have to engage with each other on a daily basis, and hijinks ensue. And it is funny, and we are talking about the show that is happy endings. I love this TV show so much. When I first discovered it, I binge watched the hell out of it and laughed my ass off, and then was so sad to see there was no more to watch. Every character on there is amazing and funny. It gave me one of my favorite TV couples of all time in Brad and Jane, played by Eliza Coupe and Damon Wayans Jr. They are hilarious as a couple, and it really made me wish, like, man, I wish I had a spouse that was exactly that way with me so we could have all types of fun together. But what an amazing show.
Yeah, so I have not seen this show at all. I didn't even know the show existed until you put it on the list. But I'm looking at the screenshots of just different things that are going on in there, and it does look like almost like a Friends from College type vibe, where it looks like it's going to be pure comedy. Everybody has their own kind of storyline, but brings it in to make it funny as hell. And I've added it to my list here of things that I'm going to watch based off of our shows that we talked about today already.
I love happy endings. Wait, are we talking about massage
Wait,
parlors?
what?
What are we talking
What?
about? Wait. Oh, the TV show.
Oh,
God.
yeah, that's
sorry.
weird. Uncomfortable for
Weird.
everybody.
Sorry. I trailed off. This show, I mean, Dee was right. It was hilarious. I actually hadn't seen it until my wife said you need to watch this show, and I was kind of like, all right, I'll watch it. I'll see how it is. She goes, no, it's funny. You need to watch it. So I'm like, all right. So I sat down and watched it with her. I laughed so much watching this show. It was just so funny. I love Damon Wayans Jr. as an actor. He's just such a hilarious comedian. And if you ever want to know how genetics play in humans, look at Damon Wayans Sr. versus Damon Wayans Jr. The man did not have a son; he cloned himself. But all that being said, they are hilarious. This is a show, if you haven't seen it, it's only 3 seasons. I mean, just go watch it. It's so funny.
Definitely on my list. Definitely.
All right, Mr. Coov, your next one, sir.
All right, I'm getting down to my top 2. Now, the one I'm going to do last, I think needs to be saved for last. And the guys know which one I'm talking about. But I'm going to take us back to the realm of sci-fi. So I was a big fan of the Sci-Fi Channel. They had a lot of great shows. They picked up Stargate, for example, once Showtime stopped. Didn't want to do it anymore. So they had Stargate as their flagship when the channel came into existence. They also had a great show with Eureka, a awesome show that you need to go see if you haven't. But I'm talking about their other top show. Once Eureka ended, this show was #1 on their network, and that's when they canceled it. Why, I don't know. And I'm talking about Warehouse 13. Now, this show is your kind of sci-fi comedy. It's about a group of special agents, part of a blacklisted agency in the U.S. government that handles supernatural artifacts. And these artifacts usually get imbued by the famous person that owned them. And they all do something when you use them or if you're in their presence. So to kind of give you an example, you had Sylvia Plath's typewriter. So she's, a famous poet. She ended up committing suicide due to depression. And anyone who uses this typewriter starts getting their life drained from them into the typewriter, into their writing, and eventually it leads them to want to commit suicide. So it took that Sylvia Plath history and made it real. We also can't forget the ever interesting episode with Abraham Lincoln's top hat, so his famous pipe stove hat. The wearer of this has an undying need, this urge that they cannot resist to save African Americans, no matter what they're doing. If they're in trouble, they will go save them. And this led to some rather interesting moments in the show. But great show. I thought it was hilarious. It was really cool to see how they brought in different artifacts from history and explained like their superpower. They bring in some other historical figures like Jack the Ripper, because no one knows what happened to Jack the Ripper, but they bring them in. Tesla, they bring Tesla into it, who I think ends up being a woman, not really a male, but history was male washed. Great show. I mean, they had some crossover with Eureka. I thought it was such a good concept, and then they just canceled it. And it was one of those that they ended the season with a cliffhanger, and then Sci-Fi Channel said, "No, we're not going to continue it. We just decided not to." So kind of left me wanting more. So as soon as we're done throwing hands at Netflix, I need to head over to the Sci-Fi building and have them bring the show back, or a movie. Just wrap it up for me, would you?
You got your back, brother.
Thank you.
I loved Warehouse 13. It was so good. Again, sci-fi, I don't. So my argument will be with sci-fi on my next topic that we're going to talk about because that's my #1. But why do you have such a great show and then just cancel it? I just never have understood this. And Warehouse 13 was one of those shows, right? That it's just like you had this like really good cast. You had like, all this stuff that was going on, these great storylines. They were, going and looking for these artifacts, and they had to be super careful with the artifacts because sometimes they got involved in it when they didn't mean to, and it just was really, really good. I never understood why they canceled the show.
Yeah, Warehouse 13, really good show, man. Like I said, the Abraham Lincoln episode happens to be my favorite episode from that show, man. As the residential black guy of this podcast, I can laugh at those, racial jokes. And that was funny. Like he had this this ever-growing urge to just save black people. And it was funny, man. And it was just a really good show. The premise itself, that these artifacts are haunted by its owner. And then so you jump from episode to episode, and it's like, we have this artifact this week, and it belonged to such and such. And, and that's how the episode was crafted. Like, you could literally do that for so many things throughout history and keep that show going. They chose to say, no, we don't want to keep this show going. I don't understand why these companies don't sell off these properties. Hey, we don't have anything we want to do with it. Would you like to buy it? I don't see why they don't do that. They just kind of throw it in the trash and say, all right, sorry, fans. You had your run with it. Now it's over. Sucks for us. But Warehouse 13 was really good, man. I love that show. Mr. J.D. Hugh, next one, sir.
So my final one, and I saved this for the final one because there's nothing more that has tilted me in my life than the cancellation of this show. And yes, it was a sci-fi show. Sci-Fi Channel show that was doing really, really, really well. Okay, and it takes the premise of the Bible, right? And how you have angels and God is left, and no one really knows where God went, but these things are all around. You have these like angels that have taken over humans, and they're called eight balls, and they're just kind of weird and crazy. And then you have these other angels, and you have Michael as the main angel who's helping the humans, and you have who's the other angel? I can't remember off the top of my head. Gabriel. You have the other angel, Gabriel, who's trying to kill the humans, but then he's kind of on the human side sometimes. And you have this weird cast. This guy who's like kind of like hunting angels, but is scared of angels, and they're trying to create this society, and they're in Vegas, and it's such a unique cast. And this show was so good. I mean, they had like these angels were constantly attacking the outpost and trying to like get it. You had internal politics where they were trying to like, should we make friends with the there, and then you had this group who was trying to find God, right? And when God comes back, he would sort this out. But apparently, the humans had ticked off God or something, and he had left it and never looked back. And the premise here was that Michael was here to say it wasn't the human's fault that God left; he just left, right? And he will come back. And you had Gabriel on the other hand that said, no, God left because the humans are so selfish that this was his creation, and that they were constantly there suspecting him, and they were into gambling and sex and this, that, and the next thing, and they took their eye away from God, and because he's gone, the only way he's going to come back is if we come back and kill them all. Right? And so, like, you had this fight on there, and I think it was like 3 seasons long, and it was so good. And it just got canceled out of the blue in the middle of one of the wars, which ticked me off even more. If you guys have not seen this, I cannot express this. I don't know if I said the show's name. The show's name is called Dominion. Have to go watch Dominion. Oh my god.
So I'll pull a GD and say I have not seen the show or heard the show, which is surprising because we've talked in earlier podcasts how much I kind of love that heaven versus hell type of media when it comes to movies or TV shows. Like I watched Lucifer on Netflix, and I'm excited they're bringing a final season in. Again, at least they've said it's final. I love that heaven versus hell storyline. So I am surprised I hadn't even heard of Dominion until you put it on this list. Count it bumping out a couple shows on my list to come up into a top tier for me to watch.
Well, I will say this show came out, that was 2008, maybe 2007. So it's not a relatively new show, but it is one that was just, God, it was so good.
Of it, never seen it. I feel like I've heard of a lot of shows, and then there's just a lot of shows that just haven't. For whatever reason, I wanted to watch it. I just never made my way around to it. But it looks really good, though. I was pulling up some of the stuff while you were talking. It looks really good. So I might have to, at some point, add this to the collection as well.
If you guys watch it, let me know what your thoughts are. And it could have been that I was just really hooked at it at the time, but I mean, and someone in my chat, Soccer Rocker, she said this is the time that I don't know if you guys ever heard of Defiance on Sci-Fi, but it came out the exact same time as Defiance did. And so they were running in parallel, and a lot of people had come to Sci-Fi to watch Defiance, and then ended up finding Dominion, and it came out, I think, right afterwards. And it's one of those that just kind of kept connecting in, and it was just so good. When you watch it, let me know. Maybe I was just delusional at the time, and it's not really that good. Maybe I should go back and watch it and see if it is good. But it was definitely, out of all shows that have been canceled on the list that we've talked about today, this one is the one that had made me the maddest because it was such a good show. I was like you guys, maybe somebody else will buy it. It looked kind of too good for Sci-Fi to begin with, and I'm like, maybe CBS will pick this up because this is where I expected the show to really land to begin with. And the fact that no one ever picked it up again is very disappointing to me.
I remember Defiance. Wasn't that the one that was tied into a video game? And what would happen in the game, you can influence the show, or at least that was the concept they were going for. Because I know there's a video game called Defiance, and it was for the show. It was a companion to the show.
Yeah, I never saw the video game portion of it.
Anyway.
But if you guys get a chance, let me know. D, what do you got for us?
That brings me to my last one. Ladies and gentlemen, that simple tagline set the world on fire and had everybody excited with one simple sentence. Because they all wanted to know what the show meant with the tagline, save the cheerleader, save the world. What a wild tagline to leave your show. You know, that's how you hype your show up. That's how you get some buzz behind it. And then the promos start rolling out. And you realize that something is special about this show because it is called Heroes. And that is literally what it's about. People with special powers. And everybody had these special abilities. And when I tell you there is not a more perfect first season to set up a show for long-term success, this show should have went on for 10 seasons minimum. But instead, we were screwed over. 2007 hit and the good old writer strike came about and royally screwed this show forever. When it came off of one of the greatest first seasons in the history of television with a ton of hype behind it and people clamoring for more, what happens? The writer strike happens. And these dudes were out of work for months and months and months. And in that time, while they were trying to get their negotiations going on, they brought in the scab writers. And the scab writers basically stripped away all the strengths of this show and made it so weak when it did come back that fans were immediately turned off, and it killed this show. It gave us one of the greatest TV villains in history in Sylar, played by Zachary Quinto. Every character on there was likable. Fans lost their minds every episode with all the different stuff going on. And all of this show was about was Sylar trying to hunt down this cheerleader because why? Because he wanted to collect every power he could from every special person that he could. But he wanted hers in particular because she could heal herself and she was virtually invincible. So he wanted that power for his own, and that is what the show is based around. If you've never seen Heroes, do yourself a damn favor and look it up immediately. I miss this show so much. It is the one thing that will get me to put my beating of the Netflix executives on hold, and that is to go fight the NBC executives for ruining this show.
We're going to be canceled due to violent threats here. Heroes was, at the time, the show to watch on TV. If you weren't watching Heroes, you could not partake in conversations at the workplace the next day because everyone was talking about that last episode. It was such a good show that it was exciting. It gave careers to a lot of actors. Hayden, I'm going to butcher her name. I apologize. Hayden Panettiere. Close enough. Zachary Quinto, who we know from Spock from the rebirth of the Star Trek series. Great show, but you're right. When they did Heroes Reborn, they brought it back after the writer strike years later to wrap it up. It was a shell of its former show. It was just not good, and it was very disheartening to see that's how they finished it out. But the original Heroes was such an excellent show. There was a couple a lot like it, like the 4400 was another show kind of with the same concept, with super humans with powers. But you're right, nothing catches you like save the cheerleader, save the world.
Yeah, this is going to be a shocker for everybody here, but I have not seen this show. Now, I will say it is not because I didn't know it existed, though. I will say that my beautiful and lovely wife watched this show, and every time she tried to get me to watch this show, I was like, I get everything else in the world to do it. Watch this show. Didn't care. 2:00 in the morning, I got to go cut the shrubs outside. See ya. Right? It didn't matter because I had zero desire to watch it. I wasn't at the workplace, so I didn't have to worry about that because I was in college at the time. So it never really impacted me. I never really had that pressure. She loved it a lot. I remember her always saying how good it was. For me, I was just like, it's another day, another world. If I watched it today, I'd probably get hooked on it, but just never got into it at the time.
What a phenomenal show, man. I mean, they set the bar so high. I couldn't pick a favorite character on there. I loved everybody that much. Like, I felt like they gave everybody equal screen time, and every actor on there absolutely killed it. Mohinder, Hero, HRG, like everybody on there was amazing, dude. Like that show had such an incredible following. When the writer strike hit and then they came back because remember they had that whole season angle where Hero had traveled back in time to like ancient Japan, and it was like, what is this? You know, and it just really killed that show, man. But I love that show. In a perfect world, had there never been a writer strike, I feel like that show could have went 5 seasons minimum, dude, and been amazing.
Absolutely.
I want to say out of that show, I do remember that tagline because when we talked about this last week, right before we wrapped up, I was like, didn't it have a tagline like "Save the girl, save the world," like "Save the cheerleader, save the world."
It just, I mean, it's one of those iconic taglines, right? I mean, it's like Aliens, you know, in space, no one can hear you scream. You just hit this one little sentence that just hooks you on it. And I mean, that was one of them.
Right?
Dude, it had a huge, like the build up to when they did the pilot episode was huge, man. They were promoting the hell out of that thing on NBC. It was running during, you know, all types of promos, man. And then when it came out, it was this phenomenal hit. I want to say they opened with like 14 million people watching, you know, for the pilot episode. And then it just went on from there. And they were steady every week with like 5 million people watching. So, man, it was a tremendous show, man. There was a multiple factors that led to it going away, but man, that was an awesome show.
And it's a unique approach to market it, right? Before it even came out. I feel like you have one or two options. You either show trailers, look, here's the stars we have in this show. This is what the show's about. Or you go the other route and leave it mysterious to kind of lure people in and go, well, I gotta find out what the show's about. I mean, it's called Heroes, or, you know, something about saving a cheerleader. Maybe it's some teen drama, whatever. But they went the mysterious route. I think that worked, obviously, because it was such a huge success. I like when kind of shows or movies will go that mysterious route. Like we talked on the earlier podcast, the Blair Witch Project kind of did that. Um, it was a good marketing choice to do because it did. It sucked everyone in, and then that pilot, everyone tuned in because they want to know what the hell these commercials were about and try to figure out what's going on.
Mr. Coov, your last one, please, sir.
All right, so I'm going to wrap up this episode with what I think is probably the one that breaks all of our hearts the most. This was a show that made Comedy Central what they are. I don't care how popular South Park is. It was this show that gave Comedy Central their legacy that they have today. It's heartbreaking how it ended because we all have heard the story. It was comedy that shone light on racial injustice. It shone light on situations that make most people uncomfortable to talk about, but they talked about it and they made fun of it and showed how ridiculous some settings can be. I'm talking about the Great Chappelle Show by none other Dave Chappelle himself. This show was, again, the show to watch for the time. It was so funny on how he would take situations that were so absurd and that in any other situation would make you feel uncomfortable, but you would watch it and kind of get the message he's really trying to portray in it. But I mean, can we talk about the pilot episode? A black Ku Klux Klan member who's blind.
One of the greatest sketches I've ever seen in my life. It was so funny.
He has no idea he's black until the very end. And just how Dave did that character was so funny. I sincerely miss the show. I think it's unbelievably wrong what Comedy Central did to Dave Chappelle to where he left the show. That's why this is on the list. It wasn't canceled. It wasn't not renewed. It was actually renewed for I think 2 or 3 more seasons. Dave Chappelle walked off that show because he was treated unfairly. Comedy Central was taking advantage of him. They were emotionally abusing him in his career, and he walked off saying, "I'm not doing it." He's talked about it in interviews, so I mean, this is nothing that isn't out there to research. But man, did I love the Chappelle Show, and I really, really wish that show was still going. That's kind of like Heroes. If they treated him fairly and gave him his due, that show would have. I don't think it'd still be on today. It would have gone 10 seasons, I think, because it was just so funny.
Talk about a show that was uncancelable, right? I mean, Dave Chappelle took every racial situation that could have existed and made people talk about it, but made it funny, right? To highlight just how crazy some things can be. And he still does that today in a lot of his stand-up comedies and things like that. He still pushes that envelope, and he knows, he even says it, I'm surprised I haven't been canceled yet. They can try, but they're not going to get it. Right? And at Dave Chappelle, when he walked off that show, I was, as a kid, I think I was like 16, 17 at the time, I have never been so disappointed to find out the show was not returning than I was at the time when Dave Chappelle left the Chappelle Show. And he had, with the characters like Rick James and Ashley Larry, and he had the Chinese clans or the Asian clans. And I mean, he just had everybody, every race was involved in this, and every situation that could have been uncomfortable was made fun of and brought to highlight. And he did such a good job of it. I just, and I think race relations were probably, around that time we're starting to recover and things were starting to go kind of, we're good, but kind of, not the great where they should have been. I think that show helped kind of calm a lot of that down.
Ladies and gentlemen, the black guys entered the chat. It's time to get into my bag. When you talk about my favorite shows of all time, you're talking about my absolute favorite show of all time. This was a show taken away from us because for some reason, you can't leave genius alone. People have to feel like they have to put their hands into something because they want to get their name on it too and say, I contributed in some sort of way. Instead of just letting the man do what he does best and just let it be and you watch the dollars come in, you decide to try to grit some sort of creative control over this show. You're okay with riding the racist jokes or the racial jokes on up the ladder to all these dollars, but once you make it there, you want to tell the man to dial it back. So I'm not surprised at all that Dave Chappelle took his ball and went home and said, screw you guys. I made this what it is, and you can't do it without me. And they tried. Mind of Mencia, Key and Peele, both cheap knockoffs of Chappelle's Show. But none will ever touch the OG. Those first 2 seasons are amongst the most perfect seasons in television history. He'll never be canceled. And why? Because people like us will not allow it to happen. Cancel culture has come for Dave Chappelle 1,000,000 times, and they'll come for him 1,000,000 more. And we will be the gatekeepers and won't allow this to happen because that man is a goddamn legend. And he's funny as shit, and I won't allow it to happen. He gave us some of the most classic TV characters of all time. I can ask anybody, what is your favorite skit from Chappelle's Show, and hear 20 different answers because they were all classics. The racial draft, where he literally had races drafting celebrities to pull onto their side once and for all. The World Series of Dice. The Black Bush skit where he's a black version of President Bush. Prince skit where they're playing basketball, the skit where he's Rick James, probably the most famous skit of the entire show. And how do you kick off a show like this? The very first damn episode, he's a blind black Klansman. And that's how you start off the show. For anybody else's career, any other comedian, it would have killed their career and they'd never be able to do another damn joke again. For him, it shot him off like a rocket to the moon and onto the craziest success we've ever seen a stand-up comedian ever have. This dude gets widely touted as probably the greatest stand-up comedian of all time. Even Kevin Hart goes so far as to say, this dude is bulletproof. He can say and do anything and nobody can cancel him because he knows how to craft a joke about things that aren't supposed to be funny. This dude is perfect. He gave us 2 of the greatest seasons in television history. It sold so many DVDs that Comedy Central went from the brink of being gone to like they're still here on TV today, trying to run his reruns. What a tremendous show that was. It didn't get canceled like you said, but it definitely went away too soon, man. I love Chappelle's Show.
Absolutely.
I mean, the amount of respect that I feel the viewers that were originally fans of the show have is incredible, right? So Chappelle a couple years ago, HBO Max picked up the Chappelle show to stream. They weren't rebooting it; they had streaming rights, and they put it on. And I think Amazon streaming also Amazon Prime also put it on their streamer. And Chappelle came out and tweeted and even said, "Cancel me. Do not watch this show because I don't think it's fair how they treated me." And anyone listening, if you're not familiar with what happened and the controversy around it, the short of it is it has to come with Comedy Central not paying Chappelle for his intellectual property, for his work on the show. They pretty much took all of his money and then said, "You're going to keep working. You have 2 more seasons we renewed. You're going to work, and we're not going to pay you for it." So he walked off because why wouldn't you with a deal like that? So when HBO picked it up to stream on HBO Max and Amazon Prime picked it up, he said, "I still haven't been paid for these shows, so don't watch me. Please. I don't want them to make money off me." And the fans didn't, myself included. I was so excited to see the Chappelle show stream because I wanted to watch him again. And when he tweeted that, I'm like, I agree with you. And thankfully, Amazon Prime and HBO Max, the exec said, "You know what? You're right." And they pulled the show. And that I think is such a great thing that the fans understood that, because nowadays it's just like, nope, I just want to, it's all about me. I'm stuck in the house with COVID. I'm going to watch whatever I want. How dare you interrupt my life? And instead, us that grew up with Chappelle's show said, no, we're on his side and we're not going to watch that show.
Damn right. Man, I too was the same way. When it was on like Netflix and Amazon and stuff, I had started to rewatch it from the beginning. And shortly after it was up there, when Dave tweeted, "Hey, don't watch it, cancel me," I stopped watching out of respect for the man. The dude gave us 2 of the perfect seasons. It's one of the things, I don't own a lot of DVDs, but I own season 1 and season 2 of Chappelle's show on DVD. Because that shit was so funny. It was one of the things, like, if you found anybody, if you were lucky enough to find somebody that wasn't watching it at the time, you forced them to binge watch those DVDs, and then they would come back to you reporting how funny this shit was, because it was amongst the funniest things that had ever been put on television at the time, man. Like, I remember I missed the first couple episodes. And one of my friends was telling me, he was like, "Dude, there's this Dave Chappelle has this show. You need to check it out." And he's explaining to me about the Black Klansman. So they happened to be playing like the first 3 episodes that night before the new episode. So I sat and watched it and was in tears laughing at how crazy this show was. And then also to tie into that, Dave Chappelle has always had his his finger on the pulse when it comes to like hip hop and stuff like that. So he had all these hip hop acts in there, and that just made it even more popular because it took a lot of these acts that weren't mainstream and made them mainstream. He took Kanye before he was Kanye. He had Mos Def on there, who most people weren't really familiar with if you weren't a super hip hop guy. And then it started bringing in bigger acts, the DMXs, the Busta Rhymes, like all these guys would come and be on the show. Like, this show is a cultural phenomenon, man. For the youngins that might come about after us, when they haven't seen this show, if they got a good sense of humor, this show will, it will be amazing to them too.
And let's be honest, that relationship started deteriorating with Comedy Central well before they stopped paying him and trying to tell him what to do. There was conversations, they were bringing him in the back. You can't say this, you can't say this, don't do this. And it was just like, they started trying to control him well before season 2 even came out. And it was like, y'all just, like you said, what is wrong with just making money and shutting up and getting out the way? I mean, the guy was doing his own thing. He was rocking it. Everybody was loving it. Why are you involved? Why did you get there?
I mean, the amount of disrespect they showed him when he walked off, he disappeared. Like, he didn't do stand-up comedy, he didn't do movies, he didn't do any other TV shows. He vanished for years and like just lived his life with him and his wife and his kids, and wanted nothing to do with Hollywood, wanted nothing to do with TV. And he just wanted to, do him, which I greatly respect. And then he came back, and when he came back with his stand-ups on Netflix, it was, I mean, I think that was some of the highest rated stand-up that they've had because people were excited to see Chappelle back. And he talks about it a little bit in his stand-up. He doesn't go into detail. He makes a joke that after he left Comedy Central, they had to bring in 2 black guys to replace him for the same show. And he's talking about Keenan, the Key and Peele show. And it was, I had that respect for him. I was excited to see Chappelle back for sure. I kind of lost where I was going with this. I had a point to make, but it kind of escaped me because I have so much going on in my head right now about Chappelle. But I mean, I just agree with what everyone's been saying. He is uncancelable. He's bulletproof. He is an icon that I can't wait to see what else he does. I hope he keeps it up, but I get it if he doesn't. I look forward to it.
Well, that is going to bring us to the end of the topics for this week. And that brings us to the question of this week. And that is, of these canceled shows or shows gone too soon, which one would you want to bring back for good? Mr. JD, which show would you like to bring back, sir?
Mine has to be up there with Dominion, but I think Chappelle Show holds more nostalgia for me. So I would go Chappelle Show. If they could bring him back originally like he was, I don't want him to come back today. I want them to go back and rewrite history and make this man right and leave him the hell alone and give us 3 and 4 back to back, because he would never do it if you offered it to him today, even with an open book. But if you could go back in time and make this show continue, it'd be the Chappelle Show, hands down.
Mr. Coov?
I would have to agree. I'm actually going to pick a different one, but I agree with JD. It would be the Chappelle Show. I just don't think he'd ever do it again. When he hosted SNL, which was also a great episode, he killed his Chappelle Show characters, put them all in a row, and each of them, he kind of did each character one last time, and then they all got executed by Chappelle. That would be my pick. I don't see it happening. So that being said, I want to see Warehouse 13 brought back because that was just an entertaining show for me.
Solid one right there. For me, Chappelle Show. I love, sketch comedy, and he did it probably the best that I've ever seen, man. And like you said, JD, if he could be brought back, if you could do it on like an HBO Max with no interference from executives or anybody that can tell the world's greatest comedian how to be funny, just let him do his damn thing. Let him, Neil Brennan, the rest of the squad all get back together and start writing without interruptions. Sign me up. I'll be in HBO Max for life because I think that show could have legs today. His audience is still big enough, and he don't have to worry about getting canceled. These youngins don't know what the hell they're talking about in regards to comedy. Everything is offensive these days, so they can just sit over there and watch Backyardigans or some shit. Leave us alone so we can watch Chappelle's Show and drink grown man beers and stuff. But yes, Chappelle Show I think would be awesome. But that is the question for you guys. Of the canceled shows, if you don't like the ones that we put out there, what canceled show would you want to bring back? And you can tell us at playeduppodcast@gmail.com, Played Up Podcast on TikTok, YouTube, and Twitter. Podcast Played Up. We do the damn thing, man. We love to hear from you. We'd like to read it on next week's podcast. And you can listen to our podcast on Google Podcasts, Spotify, and on Apple. And if you listen to us on Apple, please drop us the review, subscribe to us, let us know what it is, man. You help out the podcast a lot by letting us know how we're doing, and we really appreciate the feedback. But this is going to be it for episode 12 of the Played Up Podcast. Join us again for episode 13. Next week, we're going to be talking. I want to go ahead and reach a little nostalgia for next week, gentlemen. Episode 13, we're going to talk about shows that made our childhood. So get those lists together, and we're going to be talking about some really nostalgic shows that help us craft our childhood and into the men we are today. So please join us next week. I'm D High. That's the Coov. That's JD Hugh. We'll catch you next time. And as always, don't forget to play up.
Eat up.
We're going to get you to crack at least once every episode.
At least.